to sound awful.
Ready? You're good.
Alrighty, I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. It is October 23rd, 2014, and if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are a couple minutes late just due to some technical difficulty, but we will catch up, no doubt. We have one member who is going to be arriving late, Bill Spencer. Other than that, we'll start with community input, if there is any. And there isn't any. Okay, moving right along. Review and additions to the agenda, I don't have any. I'm not aware of any. We're basically reviewing mostly the town budget tonight. We'll have the general school update because this is also our regular meeting. And then going forward every week for the next couple of weeks, it will just be focused on town budget review. Next item, we have two sets of minutes. We have September 25th, which was our regular meeting, and then we have September 30th, which was a special meeting with the New Hampshire Municipals Association and Cordell Johnston. So if there are any, let's take them one at a time. Let's start with our regular meeting, which was 9/25. So are there any changes, additions, corrections to those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 25th minutes.
There's been a motion to approve as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Was anybody missing? I don't think so. All right, the next set of minutes are from our special meeting from September 30th. Are there any changes, corrections, deletions, anything for those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the special meeting of September 30th.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the September 30th minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right. Minutes are next item is correspondence. I did send out to the committee. Andrew had some spreadsheet and questions for when we review the budget tonight. I did forward that to everybody. He also had a couple questions on the most recent expense report. And do you want me to just read what you...
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, so that'd be great. Yeah, the highlights were, there were just a couple of variances and some basic questions that I had when comparing the budgets from last year to this year and understanding some of those variances.
Yeah, August 2013 expense report indicated that the town paid $39,000 against account, which was assessing services. It's 014152.10-312. Total annual budget for the account was $43,722. Within the attached year-end report, this was zeroed out, essentially showing that although we budgeted for payment, nothing was spent. Why was it reported that $39,000 was paid and then at year-end it was zero? And the answer to that is, and I just realized it's printing over other printing, we have been carrying encumbrances from prior years as a means of saving for 2015 evaluation. In 2012 and 2013, we charged current year expenses to the assessing budget, easier to track progress for the year against expectations. Then at year end, we performed a journal entry to clear the prior year encumbrances and refresh a new encumbrance. There's an attachment that shows the transaction pattern, and if anybody wants that attachment, I can forward that to you. And then the second question was, there's a random account as of 1/10/14 that we've not seen prior called transfer out, and there is an account number.
It's misspelled, by the way, in the budget.
Is it?
Well, it's not for, it's internal consumption. It's transfer in, transfer out.
There is an $11,500 charge against this line. What is it? This is where the auditors asked that we book the transfers for ambulance bad debt be booked. This is why 4215.10-800 for 2013 showed 0 expended. So those were just a couple of questions that Andrew had on the current expense report that we got from the town.
Yeah, I'd like just to take a moment and thank Mr. Hoke and Mr. Byron for your prompt responses as well.
Two other things, I received when we met with Cordell Johnson, he talked about the SB2 timeline, and what was on their site wasn't correct, and Michelle did forward me a correct version of the meeting's timeline, and they do correspond with what I had handed out as a calendar. And the other thing is today, from the school district, we received the financial report, and then earlier tonight we received the enrollment, October 1st enrollment and the projections from the October 1st enrollment. So those are the things we received as correspondence over the last month. Is there anything I've missed that anybody else has received or knows of? We're going to start with the school tonight because obviously the town is the bulk of tonight's meeting, so we will start with the school district and school update.
Thank you. Well, I don't really have much information to pass on at this time. We're starting our budget process at this time. We're 2 weeks into it, and things are going well. The building committee is, just to give you a heads up, is investigating reclassifying the 30s building at GMS to utilize for storage, which would then eliminate the pods in between GMS and LMS. And it's just a matter of getting the fire department and the police department's approval at this point to go forward. And for a minor expense for storage, I said the pods alone are about $1,200 a year. So after a couple of years, it'll pay for itself. And really, I don't know much else than that, unless you have any questions.
Are there any issues that you think would prevent it from, at least on the surface, from being?
It doesn't seem so from
Okay.
their initial investigations. Because basically it's just going to be storage of like paper files, that type of thing.
Okay.
Like right now it doesn't even have sprinklers, and it may not require sprinklers to do so.
Thanks.
I just was curious, you had passed out at the last meeting a timeline of reviewing the budget. Are you on target?
Yep.
So this Wednesday, you'll be making your final recommendations to the superintendent's budget?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I did have one other thing. You had inquired as far as tours of the schools.
Yes, thank you.
So if anyone does have an interest, if they want to go through you, then you can go through Frank,
Okay.
and he'll set them up. He's more than happy to take you through the schools.
Great.
Different Frank.
Yeah.
The business administrator for the school district.
Right.
Right. All right, so if anybody is interested in a tour, let me know. I know myself, it's been a long time since I've been to, especially the elementary, middle school, so I would probably be interested in seeing what's been going on in the last few years. So just let me know.
Likewise, maybe if we can coordinate, saves Frank some time as well.
Okay. All right.
That's why I suggested going through the chair,
Yep.
and that way you can coordinate with Frank. It'll be a lot easier.
Sounds good. Any questions or anything else for the school? All right, then we'll move on to town business. I don't know if Frank has any general updates for us before we jump right into the budget?
No, not really. There's not much right now going on. So we still have not gotten the cruiser in yet. I'm not sure if you've gotten a date on delivery on that.
We're still hoping the next few weeks. They're waiting for one more of the fit-up parts to come in.
Okay.
All right, then if we want to jump right into the budget then, the first review item is the executive. Floor one.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering, we have two people who have come in specifically to address their budgets tonight, and if we could address them first, out of sequence maybe, that would get them in and get them out if the committee's willing.
Sure. Is that all right, everybody? Sounds good. All right, where do you want to start? I'll let you take the lead, Frank.
You want to start, John?
All right. Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with
IT?
We'll start with IT, so your 4150.20. And
Can I just interrupt for a second? Is there anything, you had sent a summary that talked about the ups and downs, the changes and stuff. Do we want to go through that at all?
That's largely what I'm just going to try to touch on those points. It is not my intention, unless the committee needs it, to go line by line by line.
Okay.
Most of what we have are going to just be highlights here. So, information technology, the telephone and data line basically is reflecting a centralization of things we've already had in place in other departments. So while there is an increase that you see there, it is reflecting pulling the internet and phone access that had been at Town Hall that was in the rec budget into this budget. The internet access, pulling the fire department's internet access out of the fire budget into here. This way, we're looking at all of the bills in one place. The software support is our regular itemization of the things we have. I think one of Mr. Cutter's questions about website hosting hadn't been itemized in the past, and part of that was just a timing issue of when we had paid it and hadn't listed it, so we know it and needed to list it this year. Equipment maintenance, the general routine items are the same there for maintaining firewalls, voicemail systems, computer parts, server routers. Obviously, the notable item here is a shift to start paying the IT manager a stipend. This is based on the $1,000 a month. We've carried a minimal amount of contracted computer service over the past several years and have benefited from a market value donation of $50,000 to $80,000 of services each year from John Brunel. John has pointed out that his volunteer time is ultimately going to be limited, and it's something that he and I have talked about in the past of how we're going to manage that transition over a period of time. We're looking at a full freight replacing that. The level of service, we're looking at as a contracted service probably in the vicinity of $70,000. And that's something that my suggestion had been with this is a gradual approach of transitioning, recognizing John's work, and then starting to build the budget baseline so we're able to then, in future years, shift to more to that contracted computer service line. So by the time we reach 5 years, we've had a smooth transition of understanding. I'm less concerned about the hardware stuff and the software brains. That's industry standard. The problem we have is the very unique setups for all of our department-specific software that is not widely distributed. What we use in the police, what we use in fire, what we use in tax, what we use in finance, none of these are routine sort of garden variety software, and they have a variety of issues associated with them. So that's what this approach represents. So the expectation would be if we went in this model this year, in the future years, what you would be seeing is the line directly above it in that equipment maintenance line. That contracted computer services line would begin to grow as we would expand that relationship. Ultimately, then, like I said, into the 5 years out, we would likely be in a position where we would have completely transitioned that contract out.
So who is this going to?
The 12 is going to go to John in his role as our IT manager.
Okay, is that complicated by the fact that he's a selectman?
It hasn't been complicated for the past 5 to 6 years. It now only seems to be complicated because we'd like to pay him for it.
Exactly. Well, that's my point. You can volunteer till the cows come home, but when you start paying somebody money, that seems to be where there gets to be a lot of stickiness.
Yeah, I mean,
I would strictly point out to the Budget Committee that we're in the same situation with the road agent. So if there's a problem there, there's a problem on the road agent side as well.
Is, the road agent is also a selectman?
He's the road agent.
Well, I think we can talk about the road agent when we get to that point.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the IT.
So what I'm saying is, at the present time, the road agent's an elected official, it'll eventually go to appointed in March, but he is also the person who's running that department.
I agree with Mr. Cutter, we could talk about the road agent, and if we have to, if there's an ethical issue, we could assign it to a road agent also. Right now, we're talking about the IT manager.
Couldn't
And that's
this-
fine, if you want to stick
Okay.
with the IT manager. I'm pointing out that there's a disjunction that the Budget Committee has between various roles.
You don't know that,
And-
because we haven't got to that budget yet.
And you have to be able to take and make sure that you know what you're going to be doing going forward on this. So if you're making a decision on this particular issue, and I would challenge the Budget Committee as to whether they are in a position to say whether there's a conflict of interest or not. It's not the purview of the Budget Committee to even make that determination. That's up to the Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely understood.
Right.
And the citizens of the town of Litchfield.
Yeah, you're
Which-
absolutely right about that. But that's what I'm trying to understand is I actually don't have necessarily, I'm trying to understand where the money's going only because I don't have a problem paying somebody to do that. I'm just trying to figure out how this is this a new position?
Hmm.
So that's where it gets sticky. If it's a new
It's not a
position-
new position. The position already exists. Basically, the person's doing that, but he's doing it gratis.
In the budget, it's
Now,
not
we can take the approach that if Mr. Brunel were to walk away, and we were told as a Board of Selectmen that Mr. Brunel anticipates in about 3 years he will give up this role, that what will end up happening is we're going to be hit for a large sum of money all at once that we'll have to put into the budget. And what we're trying to do is prepare to start to move money towards that type of an effort, to have this type of function carried through contract services.
And that makes sense, except that slow slide into it becomes a position in a person, a new.
Well,
grade.
we already have contracted representatives who fill that role for us when Mr. Brunel's not available. It's not our intention to hire anybody.
Where is that position in the budget now? Is it on the
Line up.
contracted computer services, $6,000?
Yep.
and the rest, and if you're offended by the word stipend, we call it an honorarium. We're not paying for the actual level of service. We're getting 7, 8 times that value. We're trying to nominally recognize what we've received for free for the past 5 to 6 years and position ourselves to deal with the much larger cost down the road.
And we have a fantastic resource, volunteering right now. I'm just trying to understand how this is going to impact by making a stipend attached to it and then expanding it in the next couple of years. What our role is as a budget committee to determine, is this a new position, is this continuation of, and just a budget increase of something that's already been done, or we've got to figure out how to go forward with that. So
There
we're
is
not trying to
Sorry.
belittle any asset or volunteer that we have now. It's just we need to understand what the implications are down the road and how to deal with it today.
So the implications down the road are strictly that eventually, as I said, within 3 years, this will be supported from outside the town, and we're going to have to figure out some way to fund for that.
Okay.
If you want to put the money in, or if we want to hire or add it to the consultant line and hire a consultant, I'm all for that, because we need the services. I also, on a side note, I have a question that it's $70,000 or $80,000 worth of services. I mean, we have, on the school side, $60-something thousand is covering hundreds and hundreds of computers and PCs and laptops in 3 different schools, so.
A lot more than 60.
It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, so I still have a problem with that number, but I say that's a side note, but.
We're not here to discuss the school.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I want to make sure that's clear.
But as for the Mr. Byron's comment about it's now purview regarding the ethics and the conflict, well, true, he's right. But however, if we recommend the $12,000 knowing that it's going to Mr. Brunel, who is also the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and if we believe that is not, or there is an ethical issue there, then we are in the wrong if we recommend that money to the taxpayers. So we can't make that decision, but if we're telling the taxpayers, we're okay with the $12,000 going to Mr. Brunel to be the IT guy,
No, that's not what our job is. Our job is to determine, is $12,000 the right amount of money? And is it a new position, is it an existing position? who it goes to and who they hire has no bearing on whether we approve it or not, none whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll have to disagree with that, knowing who it is going to, that it's a known entity right now. I mean, if they wanted to lie to us and say they're going to put it in the other line and hire somebody else, and we recommend it, goes to the voters, and then after that, they say,
Are you
hey.
saying that the selectmen are lying?
No,
to
I'm
you?
saying if they wanted to. And I want to be clear, because I know we go back and forth in this sometimes. So if they wanted to lie and say that it's going to go into contracted services, they're going to hire somebody outside Litchfield, and then after we recommended it and the voters approved it, then they could say, we fooled you, now we are going to hire Mr. Brunel. Now, they're not going to do that, but I'm telling you right now, we know it's going to Mr. Brunel, and that's my issue. I cannot recommend that money.
We can't determine whether that's an appropriate expenditure based on who it's going to, or who it may go to.
I feel some ethical responsibility as elected member of this board.
As a community member, you may have that concern, but as a budget committee member, it's not our purview.
Fair enough, I can't leave my ethics at the door.
Madam Chair, can I have a question?
Sure, go ahead.
What is the conflict?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that.
I'm not sure that's.
If you don't want me to answer it, that's fine.
Why I'm asking is because it does appear to be focused at myself.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to take
And
away
I know you
from.
are, and I'd just like to go on the record first off. Been doing this since 2006, before I was a selectman. I fought a lot to do it in 2006, so I had to be a selectman. That's why I started doing it. I've been doing the services for a long time. I spend about 12 hours a week, roughly, taking care of the town in general. The conflict you comment about is, because I'm on the governing body, whenever I come forward with any kind of decision that has to be made, it's the board make the decision, I step aside. I make a recommendation based on what I do in my professional life every day. I bring forward what are the best ideas that can fit the funding model and what we need to solve. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two different solutions. The board makes the decision. I abstain from pretty much, as far as I can call on my voting record, I have abstained from every vote associated. I bring forward the facts, what the needs are, based on the requirements that the other managers in the department, the town have. I'm not sure I understand where the conflict is.
Right.
If you don't want me to answer, that's fine, I won't.
I think that knowing the hours that you put in, that's helpful, but if we're gonna get into conflict, that's not
Okay.
that's
Well,
not the plan.
the other thing I was just saying is sort of the PSA side of the contract services. The estimate is anywhere between $50,000 and $70,000. As Mr. Borkin indicated earlier, the school pays a lot more than what you indicated. There's actually several resources on staff that does it, so it's twice as much as you've indicated. The current contracting company that we use to back me up when I'm around and take care of some small tasks that I can't get to, they have estimated it would be $1,000 a week to cover it at a bare minimum, say 8 hours a week. And they're not here, they won't come through, it's on call, it's on demand. So it's a lesser level of service. You know, the average junior IT guy is starting around $55,000 a year plus benefits. We don't need a full-time IT guy, to be honest. We need a part-time guy. But it's hard to find a part-time guy unless you go contracted services. Contracted services are gonna be front-end loaded.
Why can't, as a committee, we pull out this item and recommend that it goes to warrant?
Well, we can't recommend it
Stipend
goes
or
to
new
warrant
position,
either.
whatever the Board of Selectmen would like to
Before we
do.
get there, I know Ray's been
Oh,
very
I'm sorry.
patient
I'm
over
sorry.
here. Ray, go ahead.
I actually have some questions about because to begin with, first thing I think you need to determine is what the need is, right? As Budget Committee, we need to determine is there a need. So, I actually have a series of questions, John. How many, yeah, because you're the one that came here to answer the questions that Frank isn't going to answer.
No, I came
I'll
to
be
answer
glad
them
to
first.
answer 'em.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
want to direct them to me, and then we can,
Okay,
John and I
Jason.
can share.
How many users does the town and the police have? I'd like to broken out by, how many active users are there on, like, police shift? And how many users overall? How many servers are you supporting? How many workstations? And have you thought about going VDI and hosting those services out to Amazon or somebody else? So that all you really have to deal with is a network connection,
So-
which would certainly bring down those costs of
Yeah,
on-site.
So as you know, the town leverages cloud services from Unique Labs to deal with a lot of those day-to-day general compute stuff. We have approximately 85 accounts that are active all the time, that cover both police department, that covers police department 100%, all town employees, most committees, it does not cover the fire department yet 100%. So that doesn't equate to the actual users on our domain, as you know. Our domain has roughly about 150 some odd employees on there. We have an infrastructure that exists of 4 servers. No, 5 servers, sorry. There's one dedicated to the fire department role, one dedicated, VM virtualized. There's only one physical one. One virtualized, one is dedicated to PD, and then another one for the PD, for the town services. And then there's obviously the domain controllers, right?
Yep.
The infrastructure stuff that do all the backups and
So
stuff.
5 servers, but
So
dedicated to different
5
roles.
servers, some dedicated roles because of some of the divisionaries that happen. And then we obviously have the phone system. We have some various systems that are inside, like our not only recording systems, our video systems, those kind of things.
So how many workstations are there, actual physical workstations?
Physical workstations, we leverage 2 VDI instances today. We actually have 4 in total workstations that are virtualized. But as far as physical workstations do workloads, 25.
25 desktops, and does that count the systems that are in the police cars, or are you counting those as?
No, I did not, sorry, so there's 4 of those.
And there's 4 more.
Do you want to talk
And-
why thin clients are a challenge for us to roll out further?
Well, I mean, the thin card, and Ray knows this,
Yeah.
the thin card requires other software investments, like a broker and stuff like that deal with load balance, and we haven't made that investment yet. We have some of the working parts, we do have some thin clients that we do is sort of hardwired to where they're gonna go. We don't have the flexibility to do it anywhere yet. So it's still on the work to do it. Obviously, there's also other network challenges too. As you get more thin clients, you need better storage. We have great storage, but some of that drives to go SS solid state drives and that kind of thing. We haven't made that investment because still at this point, desktops are really cheap and there's so much throwaway at this point, so. But they do have an overhead.
Yeah. So you estimate that you're doing about 12 hours a week?
Yeah, so 12 hours, the problem with 12 hours is that I field most break-fix calls that can't be handled by Jason, who's in the staff, or, one of the guys may know something knowledgeable about it. I'm also working with the state on different aspects. We have virtual connections out to the state systems that need to be, monitored and all that. Do the monthly backups happen every day. We have transactions happen in the state. I got PCI compliance reports I got to do, all the different things around that. On average, 12 hours is what it takes. Some weeks it's 5 hours, it just depends.
Your state connections, do they require any kind of special clearance?
Yeah, so when I started working on the police department, I had to be FBI cleared, background check. I work in financial services, so I already have a pretty, financial checks and all that stuff. It's fingerprinted and validated. The way the fire department and police department work as far as access, everything is sort of compartmentalized. Everything is tracked and logged. There was some concern about my access as a selectman to these systems. Every move I make is tracked and recorded to the FBI state, so I can't make random checks on anything. So just to bring that up.
Why was there concern?
I believe you brought it up in one of your meetings, or the email you sent me. But you brought that concern up. You raised concerns with an active selectman getting access to systems that shouldn't have access to.
And that is
In my professional career for the 30-plus years, I've always been in areas of where most average people don't get to see.
I'm in the same position.
At the level I am, what I do in my job, trust is a big thing. And I have ethics that around what I'll do.
Now, to be clear, I'm not saying, I want to be very clear, I'm not saying Mr. Brunel is going to do something. I'm just saying this should not be, the two should not be together. Now, if you're telling me we can't make our decision based upon that, that's fine. Then my decision will be based upon if they want to put the $50,000 or $60,000 in the budget and hire whatever it takes to get it done, as long as the number matches the services, and I can trust some of the guys here to help me out with that, with my decision, then I'd be for putting that in the budget. This ramp up, I'm not for it. So I have reasons on the conflict of interest side and on the financial side.
Ray, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I actually had a couple more questions about the maintenance. So, out of the maintenance line items that are in the budget, I'm assuming the VMware is just software, and the ASA, the phone system, and all that is covering 24/7 replacement?
Yeah, all the critical hardware is 7x24 on site dispatch, that's the UC, the compute side of it. The switches are all next day, we do have some spares. The software is, there's no such thing as a 7x24 software, you can call, you get support. VMware, that's our rights to upgrade, call in for support.
That's actually all I had.
Andrew, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, thanks. Why can't we, as a committee, just recommend that this go to warrant?
We cannot tell the selectmen what to put on a warrant.
We're not telling.
Just pull it out.
Let's pull it out.
Right, that we
We
can do.
can certainly do that.
Okay.
That's our limit of what we can do, quite honestly.
Okay.
If we don't feel it's justified, or if we feel,
But in fairness, we can't make an official recommendation, but of course we could say, hey, look, we think this would be a better warrant. We could be clear on what individual intentions are, but we have no final say in that matter. We have no authority to say, make this a warrant. We could only pull it out as a committee, but we could say, this would be better as a warrant.
May I pose another question?
let me just double check, Dan?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have done your due diligence to make sure that this is legal or ethical, however.
I guess I resent,
I have
resent
trouble-
the ethical questions
As
quite
a
a bit. It's been
taxpayer,
fine for
yeah.
5 or 6 years, as a selectman doing it for free, and now we're looking at a stipend as a transition, and now there's an issue with it.
I'm for
Yeah.
this
John-
as a
John, to his-
taxpayer.
to his
I'm
credit-
looking at the taxpayer point of view, but I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys have done your due diligence to make sure that this is okay to,
Yeah,
I'd much rather for the town to pay 12 rather than 70, but it'll come down to you guys whether this is okay or not,
If anything, I would say, I think, the questions John related earlier, when we made these purchases, I think John has bent over backwards to bring the selectmen into levels of decision about equipment purchase that most other department heads don't do, because of that that dual role. The garden variety stuff, like the other department heads that work through me, John brings a lot of stuff, the garden variety stuff through me. So it's an interesting dilemma, and I get it, because he does wear two roles, and, we joke sometimes when John's in my office, are you the IT guy or are you the chairman of the board? Because I'm going to tell you, it's a different role. I think that the separation is important, and I think the benefit that we get from all of those external credentials that come in, all of those cost money when I have to pay in the real world. Every one of those credentials of, the financial clearance, the FBI clearances, all the things that we require, every one of those, every one I add on the list adds some more money onto the hourly rate, so.
I will tell you that as a selectman, I've been on the board now for a bunch of years, and in those years, which include the year from Mr. Brunel, all of that time, Mr. Brunel has refused to participate in decisions by the board. He brought information to the board, presented information, answered our questions, but he refused to participate in the votes on where we go in terms of IT stuff. And he has been very good about that, and I have no problem whatsoever with Mr. Brunel's participation in this role.
And we keep bringing it back to Mr. Brunel, and what the Budget Committee has to do is consider it, this is a volunteer position that the selectmen are proposing become a paid position, and we have to stick with that, okay? We do have to take the person away from it. It's not part of our consideration. It can't be part of our
Why are you looking at
consideration.
me?
I'm just, because you're on the right side of the room, I don't know. But I just want to keep it from being about the person, and this is the first time it's happened. In the past, whenever an existing person has filled a position and there's a discussion about a change of a position, whether it be town or school, it ends up being about the person, and we can't make it about the person. So I want to reiterate, this is a volunteer position that the selectmen are proposing to become a paid position with a $12,000 stipend.
Well,
Okay?
with that reasoning, then it should be a warrant article because it's a new position.
Okay. So, no, I think I've heard from everybody. John, did you have some more to add to it?
I actually wanted to ask, say that, I'll say it. I also understand, well, first off, I've been doing this a long time, and I've come forward with this budget committee with a lot of big projects which you've supported. And at that time, there's never been any issues around the so-called conflict. What has come out of this committee with people who know me and in the same field is, how are you doing it with the time? How are you able to invest the time? I've been investing the time for, like I said, since about 2006, 2007, and I haven't let it down. I hate to say it, it does feel like it comes about me, the individual, which I'm not sure why. I've been a selectman for quite a long time to perform this role. I'm sure the catalyst is the stipend request, which is fine. But also, there's been comments with regard to my employer too, and the leniency of me recommending my employer's products over somebody else's products. I want to go back to what I said earlier. When we went down this road 3 or 4 years ago to rebuild the system, we brought forward a generic plan for funding. We went off and sought bids for what's the right solution and what's the right platforms. And we went with, ultimately, put some of my company's stuff and some of other stuff. But we did that because the costs made sense. The deals were good. It fit into our budget model, and we were getting more than we could have afforded otherwise. I get no financial gain for anything this town does with any company related to my company. Everything I do is through a third-party vendor that doesn't even know I work for the company. So there's no conflict there, other than the fact that I know the secrets of navigating through the best deals. So really, I'm more or less, if you want to define it, I'm screwing my company, not the town. My companies are well aware of the volunteering I do for this town, and they have no conflict with it. And the money that we spend on my company is minor compared to what I bring to that company in here.
All right, so again, I want to remind us to keep it to, there's a volunteer position that's proposed to be a stipend position. And that's how we should view it. So is there any more comments or questions on this? Rick?
Jason, do you have any upgrades proposed for the next year? I mean, your technology is aging pretty fast.
In terms of, yeah, if we move on to the next bundle of lines, I can hit that pretty quickly. I mean, not a whole lot. We sort of have a routine, we're looking probably 4 or 5 desktop, laptop unit upgrades. The notable thing you'll see is the printer copier upgrades. We're showing an $8,500 increase under equipment purchase. You will also notice one line below, we've dropped $2,300 out of equipment leases, and we've dropped some copiers. So I mean, the project for us this year is not, we've gotten the big stuff behind us. We did server, we did phone system. Now we're trying to rationalize. We have a bunch of single-use printers. We've centralized a bunch of stuff, but we sort of have these specialty things. So that 85 is the project of the year. That represents getting some of the single-use printers reviewed and out of the town clerk's office into something that's more efficient. And the big chunk of it, about $5,500, is reserved for replacing copier scanner in the fire department. We're coming off of, this year we came off of leases in both the fire machine that they have and the machine we have at Town Hall. We learned 2 years ago that when we replaced the police copier, scanner, fax, all in one, leasing looks real nice in your budget, but is really a bad financial move in terms of long run. So I think you had asked the question, did we lease in the past? Yeah, we have.
I just didn't know.
This is proposing
strategy, right?
Yeah, this is proposing a change outright. And I don't have a specific piece of equipment in mind. I've talked to 1 or 2 of the copier, printer, scanner vendors, and I basically have said, hey, if this goes forwards and you get a credible, short run cycle used machine, give me a call. Because that's kind of where I'm looking to go. It's not a crisis, but I want to be able to move when I can find a good deal.
And I think we'll come with help. I don't know if the question was, the infrastructure we bought 3 years ago, you're right, it's coming up on its side, right? So it's 5 year to 7 year life cycle. The equipment we have, I don't foresee any replacement requirements. It'll be covered and supported up to 7 years. So, software is always being refreshed. So our phone system's already got its first upgrade. The hardware we're running on our software is all late-gen stuff for the phone system, so that investment is still 5 years out. I don't anticipate any, I don't foresee any upgrades to the core systems the next couple of years anyway.
I have a question for Jason. How come you didn't just make the contracted computer services line $18,000?
Because I didn't make it $18,000 because
We would have been accused of hiding it.
I'm asking bluntly, I'm asking that question.
The answer is, I wanted to be upfront and say, as I've said, I want to start the transition of, I know we have the ticking package, I could bury my head in the sand and do nothing, and come back in 3 to 4 years and watch everybody in shock of, oh my gosh, now you've gone from 6,000 to 70,000, how'd that happen? And I wanted to start gradually doing it, and I wanted to show 12,000 to recognize that part of what we have is a unique circumstance that is probably not going to be duplicated again. I'm probably not going to have a local resident who can volunteer the level of skill and expertise and hours week after week for 6 years that I have in John. So this is a one-off.
I was the pre-John version, which I didn't work anywhere near as hard as he does.
So now I have a...
So to finish, and to kind of get back to what you...
I was the pre-John version.
Yeah, so...
It didn't work as hard as I...
I looked at this as the one-off of step one on this multi-year plan is let's recognize with the stipend. Next year, you will see, if we follow this plan, that contracted computer services line will bump up. It will bump up again. And when John leaves, that 12 goes back to 0 because this is a temporary thing. This is not, I'm creating a new position for eternity. I'm in a transition program. And then when we contract at the end, you'll see whatever that number is at that point, 70,000, whatever it is in the contracted line.
So now my question to Cindy is, based upon what Jason just said, this is a unique situation. So how could we not consider the person? The first question you asked is, who is this money going to? So this is unique. It does have something to do about the person. And it's not just a citizen in town. It's a citizen who happens to be chairman of the Board of Selectmen. So if it was just a citizen, it wouldn't be an issue because then that citizen would be volunteering his services and not also be elected. So it does have something to do with it. So it's tough, and I find it hard, because also when at budget hearing, when you're up speaking, the first question somebody might ask you is, Cindy, who's that money going to? And then you're going to answer, and then they're going to say, well, do you think that's a conflict of interest? And you might have to answer, or we might have to answer individually, yes or no.
Well, I think the question is, for the budget committee is, should we be budgeting for a unique circumstance? Not what that circumstance is, and that it may change, but should we be budgeting for that? And perhaps it should be a position, a part-time position, or something else, and not budget for a unique circumstance.
Now, by the way, I do understand where you're coming from and your goal, which is my goal too. We need to stay focused. But Mr. Hoke said this is a unique, one-off circumstance that will probably never happen again. So it's tough to stick to the fine line because we're at that fine line, in my opinion. So we're choosing to stay really strict on our end on something that's skirting the line, in my opinion.
No, what I just said was, we've just heard the explanation that it's a unique circumstance.
Right.
So then my deliberation is, should we be budgeting for a unique circumstance? I'm not sure that we should. And that's my personal opinion. We should be budgeting for something that is generic and can be carried forward if the person who they're talking about gets hit by a bus tomorrow, God forbid.
Okay.
But that's what I mean. I'm not sure we should be budgeting for a unique circumstance.
Okay, so you and I might get to the same place for different reasons or varying reasons. Okay. And that's fine. It's just, this conversation is important to have, and we're having it, and I appreciate it. And again, I got to say again, I'm not saying Mr. Brunel is going to do anything wrong. I'm just trying to think ahead.
Another unrelated question, and Mr. Hoke, if I can put you on the spot, do you have your updated expenses year-to-date available?
I have it through last week.
Okay. Parks and Rec, 452010, 341.
Mm-hmm.
What have you spent on that?
Madam Chair, we're off subject.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
like
say,
it.
what,
No,
where is that?
That's IT. This is IT related, okay?
Are
And
you
wh-
trying to boomerang back the cost of, back in the first line of
Yes.
phones and?
Exactly. So under telephone and data, Comcast Internet Access, Dare Pond, there's a new line item for $1,740.
Oh, okay.
When we reviewed it, Mr. Hoke had said this was formerly a cost in the town hall budget. I reviewed that from last year and looked at the expenses, and I'm questioning what the year-to-date expenses are on that current line.
Okay, good.
Town hall,
Talent.
You will find, hold on a sec, let me tell you where we are. I'm happy to give you that current number, which is going to be lower. Current year expenses are going to be actually zero because we've started charging, hold on. Gotcha, I know you're excited, I saw that nod. No, we've actually started moving them into the line this year into the IT budget.
Okay.
So, in fact, if you go back to the IT budget, because I had actually started charging a few there this year, it's about, we were running at the beginning of the year $60 a month, and then we journal entered those out to put them all in one place, because we discovered we had them in two places. So, if you look at this current year, in the telephone and data line.
For IT?
Yeah, for IT, we're running, we're going to hit, there's a good chance we'll probably be over by the time we end up with everything all in there.
Yeah, as of 9/30, right, so it might be a
Yeah.
little bit dated. I had $21,000.
Yeah, we're at about 21,000, and that would be through basically your August bill services.
One final question, is it fair to say that the account under Parks and Rec is a one-for-one carryover into this year's budget for the 1760? Is it blended with is that one number blended with any other line?
Ish.
I would say just be careful from last year to this year, because it went over to Comcast. There's a Comcast service, and there's also a Fairpoint service.
Right.
For the fire safety system. So I'm not sure, all those costs have been put in the IT budget this year. I've been paying those bills since the beginning of the year. I know that I believe the Comcast.
You spend about $97 a month.
Comcast charges like $63.15, $64 a
Yep.
year, and I believe that the Fairpoint charge is around.
It's been around 35.
Yeah, I'm just trying to evaluate why the default for this year was $950 for that line, what was budgeted, and now it's going up to 1760.
Yeah, I think what we had budgeted originally was 2 phone lines and missed the internet, so.
Yeah, the internet was discovered to be disconnected when it wasn't been paid because they forgot they had it. They were using it, but no one realized it was there. So we fixed that when we had Winterfest, and it was required for Winterfest to take in credit card payments.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on the IT budget, Ray?
One more question, and this is more based on just general budgeting and accounting. Hey,
Beating into us.
over the last couple of years, we've been rolling all this stuff up into these one accounts. Is this your whole account structure, or do you have that sub-ledger so that you can see, like Verizon Wireless, how much for police, how much for fire, how much for each department, or is it just all gets booked into that account period?
As a department head, I can tell you about which department, just because I have to track that way.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're.
But are we accounting for that? I mean, we should be able to look at and say, here's what the police department costs us, or here's what the fire department costs us, or here's what town hall costs us.
Yes and no, I have access to that information. Part of the reason for centralizing it is one bill, one department head controlling it and paying attention to the master that, we can break it all out. We no longer charge out to all of the, the master bill to every department because it's an exercise in spending time and money in accounting more than it is in informing. So that part of the reason we've started centralizing things is it's one bill. We can kind of look and see what's there if we need to. But there's a lot less to be gained by knowing that the police department uses 200 hours of the 750 or whatever the breakdown is each month.
I think the other challenge, Ray, is that you share a lot of resources together, right? So for phone lines, we have a PRI going out that's cross-shared, right? The Comcast service out of town hall, which is PD town, it's all shared. So it's very hard to break those.
Well, Verizon Wireless represents, I'm assuming,
All phones in town.
a series of cell phones, and each department is using so much.
Right,
But
so,
I just asked because I don't see it here, and there's not a way to see it. I was wondering if we were accounting for it anymore like that. The answer is really no.
Yeah, yes.
well, we track the wireless services, but we do have the breakdowns. And in that wireless services, the handheld phones that are assigned to certain employees, plus all of the orders we have in our cruisers and for remote access in different departments.
I'm just curious.
Sorry, one more
I'm
question.
just not a big fan of block numbers that you can't see anything into.
It's important because I'm trying to assess whether this is like $1,000 high, right? And I want to make sure I have all the information. For Comcast Internet Access, right, it was mentioned that, or on the line description, it also says phone service, but then you also mentioned that it's Fairpoint for phone, correct? But Fairpoint's budgeted above, and you said Comcast alone internet is $90, $100 a month, we'll call it, right?
At Talent Hall.
Right. So that would mean this line's definitely high.
Town Hall has a Fairpoint line, internet service, and a Comcast line for phone. That's two phone lines, one by Fairpoint, one by Comcast, and then the internet service.
Got it. Okay. So there's two phones.
Right. A lot of our facilities have to have two phones, but we can actually share from, like, in the highway department, we share the highway phone and the recycle center's phone, so we can get by with a single phone line. But that requires put some infrastructure on the ground to do that, so we can save that monthly bill. We did that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the IT budget? All right. Moving on, what did you want to cover
I'd like
next?
to go on to sanitation.
4321.1?
This budget basically reflects continuing operations at our current level. We made a couple changes this year following the default budget. So they started hitting our expenses this year, second and third quarter. We moved previously Freon collection, electronics were being handled and gross appropriated. We moved those into the co-op we work with that also sells our materials. So the cost, actually Freon, it ended up being $1 cheaper a unit, but we're not paying directly. They also handle a lot of our sales, so it actually comes back with lower revenues to us. So it also meant we weren't spending money this year. So when you see the decrease you're seeing in recycled, direct disposal, and electronics are simply the shift from one payment method to another. Demolition material disposal, we have seen a difference because we've changed the approach that we're doing. If you look there, you see we're spending, next year we'll be spending about $78.67 a ton for construction and demolition debris. Starting the second quarter of this year, we began recycling wood separately through the co-op, so pulling recyclable wood out. And that cost is $50 a ton. Again, that's coming out of the deferred revenues. So what you're able to see there in the drop in the 693 line reflects really pulling the wood out and handling it a different way. Wood is going to be cheaper to handle this way too. So it's sort of a double win. It lowers this budget, but it's also cheaper because you're saving almost $28 a ton for that material when you're recycling it. Solid waste disposal. We have sort of the routine cost, number of hauls, Haul charge will be going up slightly, and we budgeted 1,000 tons. It was suggested that the 1,000 tons, or that line seemed high. Went back and said, well, let's look at the numbers. We've done 769 tons through the first 3 quarters of the year. The last quarter of 2013, we did 255 tons. So when I look at that data, that actually tells me that my budget's too low rather than too high. So, I think we're at an adequate number there. It's certainly not over budgeted. This year, it looks as if we're going to hit that projected number we have pretty much straight on. We've seen a trend, and unfortunately, one of the trends as the economy improves is your MSW increases, because consumption's picking up and trash is picking up. And we have the data this year that is showing that happening, compared with previous years. So those are really the things that we're seeing in this budget. Everything else is sort of same as it's been.
Any questions?
Did we lose one laborer? I see the line
Yes.
has a 0.
Yeah, we lost one, and we moved some of the hours around to, between the 3 positions that we have there.
Okay, and what are the annual dues for household hazardous waste collection?
What are the dues for
I
it?
mean, yeah,
What does it go for?
Well, yeah,
Okay, we.
NRPC has a program.
Feel free.
NRPC has a program that collects hazardous waste, and they run that out of mostly the Nashua facility. And what happens is towns who are members of this can contribute their hazardous waste. Those are things that we don't handle at our facility because they're hazardous. So it makes sense for us to be able to put it there, and to allow citizens to be able to go over there and to drop off their materials that they have when they clean out their basement, that type of stuff.
So stuff isn't dumped at our place and then brought there?
No, you end up taking.
You as a citizen have to go there.
The citizen also has to pay when they go there, right?
I think it's a minimal fee of $10.
Now, even though we're paying, the taxpayers are paying $6,200, they still have to pay 10?
It's my understanding.
So what if we didn't pay the $6,200?
Then they would not be allowed through the gate.
Can't go at all, there's not like a higher charge, 20?
No,
It's just not allowed.
Right.
right.
And that's where people just now dump the stuff on the side of the road, typically, right?
That's why we went to this, because we were finding all types of fun stuff that was left on the sides of roads.
So that's the service out of Nashua, and there's no competing service, there's not one in Manchester.
No, because what ends up happening is the state funds part of this, because this is not cheap stuff to get rid of. I kind of get it, you're saying, hey, the town's paying dues, and then I, the user, go pay even more. That is all subsidized further by funds that come through from the state and some of the ways that they collect that. So, the next one is this Saturday, November 1st, 8 to noon, Nashua Public Works
Okay,
Garage.
so that's the one and that's what we're paying for that, the right to go
To
to.
take
So you have to
stuff
show
there.
ID.
Do we know how many of our residents use it?
We've seen numbers, and they're, I don't know if I have this year's numbers.
This year's isn't in yet.
Yeah, this year's is, and I'm not going to kid you, they're not great.
So I'm just wondering if it's,
Now,
I've actually worked at it when I was on the NRPC board. And it depends on what time of the year and when they run it, if it's a good weekend. You'll see people, I've seen people that came from Litchfield. Some people didn't report exactly where they were from, or the reporting gets confused, because you're taking electronics over here and paint over there and this over there, and when I tell you it's a free-for-all, the fact that they get any reporting is amazing. So,
yeah.
it is a valuable service.
but our residents are using the
Yes.
service?
Yeah.
They are using it, and we actually are trying, and hopefully we'll get on the schedule next year. Most of what they host are in Nashua,
Yeah.
and they do like a remote one in Milford. And then, I'm having a hard time picturing, a lot of Litchfield residents filling their trunk with
Right.
paint and chemicals and hauling over to Milford to get rid of it. We're trying to get them to host one on this side of the river for their members, because Hudson, Litchfield, Pelham are all members. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll have one that's a little more convenient next year for our people too.
And the last question is 6:30, equipment repair, baler, compactor, skid steer repairs. Are we getting a new baler?
Yes.
Yes.
We had the baler fail, and what ended up happening with the baler was that it is our oldest baler, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
No?
not the oldest one. It's old. We bought it in 2008 used.
So what ended up happening is the guides that ride up and down and the slots on the side of it, which control the press, basically rusted out. They're gone, as well as the slides themselves. The grooves that they ride in are totally stripped out.
Okay, so with that, and then being that we also got a new skid steer, would that alter that line at all?
No, because we will be
Different.
paying for preventive maintenance. And that's, that covers the basic preventive maintenance program. We make sure that we're doing that, so we're not waiting till stuff breaks.
Oh, so under skid steer tune-up, that's different than the skid steer repair?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of that 2,000 is going to be baler compactor for the preventive maintenance, and, skid steer, yeah, the tune-up is a specific action there. Any other small pieces that happen, it's gonna come out of there,
No, I
You need
understand.
Yeah, you need a couple parts.
My
yeah.
question was more generic, because I saw it says compactor. For the compactors has its own line, 2,000.
Yep.
The skid steer has its own line for, all necessary stuff. But then I saw on the bottom another 2,000 for baler, compactor, skid steer. Now, last year, we had 2 old balers. Now we're gonna have 1 old baler, 1 brand-new baler. And last year we had an old skid steer, now we're gonna have a brand new skid steer, so that's why I'm wondering, the lines are staying the same, which are great, they're not going up, but I was wondering, would it go down, because we have 2 new items where there's money covered? I mean, if the answer is no, it's no, I'm just trying to understand.
It may go down, it may not, I don't know. I mean, $2,000 isn't a whole lot for all those pieces. I mean, one thing on any of those machines can chew up that cushion pretty easily. I'll be honest, if I budgeted $2,000 a machine for each of those, then you asked me that question, I'd say, yeah, you could probably back off on the newer machines.
Okay.
We're talking $2,000 to cover everything.
Yeah, thank you.
On am I good to go?
Go
Sorry.
ahead, yeah.
On 693 and 694 again, thank you for your analysis. The 693 line, again, I'm looking at a report as of 9/30, right? So I have 42,000 year-to-date spent, and then 66,000 on 694 year-to-date spent through 9/30, right? Is that actually through 9/30, or is there a lag in billing there?
There's a lag in billing there. That's why I gave you tonnage numbers instead, because that's where I'm.
And that's why I'm trying to make sense of the
Yeah,
numbers still.
and that's why I gave you through 3 quarters, and then I gave you the comparison to last quarter last year, because that's, for us, that's more informative on how we track it. If you try to do it just on cash, it's a little tough to figure out, because those bills are big bills when they come through.
Sure, understood. Yep.
Can you just, 696, you said that was different now, how?
We are actually, it is being handled through the co-op that we use to sell products. So we're basically still paying the same amount. It is simply being kept out of the revenues that we have from sale of material. Along the way, we changed vendor. It appears that, the cost is equal there and unchanged. So it's an accounting shift, and it's an approach shift that we did by working more closely with the co-op on those items.
Any other questions for solid waste? None? All right, thank you very much.
I'd like to add, thank you, David, for doing such a good job down there.
Thank you, Brad. Good to see you.
All right, so from here, we're going to start back up at the top then and go,
Anywhere you'd like to go.
yep, let's start at the top, the executive.
All right. Notable changes here are probably only twofold. Contract with town administrator and restoring the selectmen's salaries, which the selectmen deferred this year due to the default budget.
All right, any,
Remind me on the selectmen's salaries, 13 was a default year too. What was done? Was the stipend, I'm going to call it a stipend, it's called a salary year, call it what you want. Was that included in the budget for default 13 or not?
Yes, I think it was retained, it was retained and paid in 13.
I seem to remember, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, depending on the budget year and the result of the budget vote, it's been there, it's been voted not to accept it. It depends on the year.
Well, it's always been in the budget.
No, I think there have been years the selectmen have voted not to.
One year, the selectmen voted to take it out, and the budget committee put it back in. Brent Lemire, yeah. My question on that is, what was the conversation with the selectmen as to the justification for that, for putting it back?
The Board of Selectmen have always had it into the budget, and it was decided that we would continue to put it into the budget as normal.
I know it's a very uncomfortable subject.
Well, but it's important to effectively challenge the budget too,
You know,
right? So,
If you're looking to try and say, is it high or is it low or whatever,
No.
I mean, you can do a comparison against other organizations. I was gonna say companies, I'm sorry, I'm stepping out of my, whatever. But other organizations of towns of a similar size have stipends for the selectmen, ranging from 2,800 to 34, 35, 45, 700 is Berlin. Bow is 1,000. Brookline's 1,200 to 1,500. Charlestown, which is I'm moving to immediately, is 9,900. Epping is 2,000 to 2,200. Farmington's 2,000 to 2,500. Franklin's 300. Guilford, there's none listed. Hampstead, 3,300 to 4,000. Hillsborough, 2,000. Hollis is 4,000.
I think we get it, right? So it's a range.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know we all have our own thoughts on that. If you choose to look at it compared to other towns, well, and that's important. I choose to not. I have my own reasons, but you guys thought it was important. It was the first thing removed from the budget. It was on the first line when the voters said no more money. So now the Board of Selectmen must think that the voters can either are willing to pay it this year or can afford it this year, which is why you put it back. I'm assuming that's the reason, right?
It's not up to the selectmen to determine whether the voters or the citizens of the town can afford it. That's the budget committee's decision.
You see, then I'll give my opinion. I don't think so. I think the voters have been very clear. This, you could say it was in for years, but last year it wasn't, so this is a $6,000 raise over last year. I think, my opinion, it should not be in this budget, and although I have no authority or purview, put it on a warrant. And this issue will never come back again. If the voters say yes, because then it'll never, I got 2 more years here, I'll never challenge it again. But I think this is the perfect time now that they're giving us a technical $6,000 raise to themselves. It's a good time to put it on a warrant. And it shouldn't be in the budget, specifically since the voters said no for 2 years in a row with a higher dollar amount.
First off, number one, it's not a $6,000 raise. I don't get anywhere near $6,000 a year.
To the selectmen.
Please let me finish, Mr. Hess, would you? Thank you. I get $1,200 a year, which is why if you divide it by 5 with 6,000, that's what you come up with. Secondarily, it was in the budget last year. It was also in the default budget last year. The Board of Selectmen made a decision, an active decision, and it was strictly a decision by the Board of Selectmen, not a decision by the voters, to move that money out and to use it for the purposes, because we felt that the budget was so tight. What you're proposing is now to run something back through as a warrant article that has, in the past, gone through as warrant articles and has been done that way forever and ever, and has been carried through all the budgets that I've ever sat through, and has been historically in the town's overall budget. Now, if it's a decision that you're making, and I'm going to be very careful here to stick to the Board of Selectmen, if it's a decision you're making that elected officials should not get a stipend, then we'll discuss that when we get to other budgets.
My decision has a lot to do with last year and that the budget that it was taken out.
It was not taken out.
It was taken out by the Board of Selectmen last year.
We made a decision to take and move.
I mean, basically, you repeated exactly, I mean, we agreed on how we got here. You said exactly what I said, so I think we actually agree. You said exactly what I said. And I do agree that's how it went down. Having said that, my philosophy, when I look at these budgets, it's not baseline, it's zero-based. So I look at a bunch of zeros down every line, and in my mind, when I'm spending hours going over this, everything starts at zero. And then I think, is it appropriate? Should it be a warrant? Should it not? I know where my limitations are, but in my world, zero-based, and also added to it that it wasn't in there last year, taken out by the Board of Selectmen. This is the perfect opportunity. The voters said no 2 years in a row to the proposed budget. This is the perfect opportunity to put it on a warrant and start from scratch, and now we could say the voters said yes.
Chris, how do you know the voters haven't said yes in the past? Because I quite frankly believe that it came about historically in the budget as a warrant article.
Okay?
I
And in
think,
fact, the voters have said yes to even larger stipends than what's in there now.
Then put it in at a larger stipend and put it in.
Board of Selectmen does not feel the largest stipend is needed.
can I just ask a question? Have the voters been asked since we implemented a town administrator? Because I can see a stipend prior to a town administrator, but now we have a town administrator who's doing a lot, has been delegated many of the jobs that the Board of Selectmen used to do. So for that reason, I would not support a stipend, because we now have a person in a position to do those jobs. That is the reason I'm not supporting it.
Yeah, I would point out, when you look at the comparative list that Frank ran through, many of those towns have administrators.
I don't live in those towns, I'm sorry.
Well,
I would just like to ask the town of Litchfield if they support giving the Board of Selectmen a stipend in addition to a town administrator. That's my reason to oppose it. I understand you'd like to compare it to other towns. I'm looking here.
Okay, can I finish my sentence?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Please.
The comparison that Frank provided with other towns, I think, is relevant in that, to understand that towns that have administrators and managers are on that list, and they pay their selectmen. I know it was new here for Litchfield when you went to an administrator. So saying, now that there's administrator, the selectmen don't need a stipend, is not, the fact that other town, the majority of other towns have not taken that route, I think, is a reference point and a fact.
And I will also say that the Board of Selectmen have cut back on the stipend, as I said a couple moments ago, since we've had the town administrator.
And if I could just jump in, what has happened in the past is it has been the budget committee that has gone out and done town-to-town comparison, whether you think that's valid or not. The budget committee has done a town-to-town comparison and has recommended in the past a change of an increase to the selectmen's stipend. So whether you believe it's appropriate or not, that's been done in the past. That's historically how a stipend has been given to them, and it's been something that's gone through the voters numerous times since town meeting, when voters
Right.
sat there and went line by line.
And that's fine, but my concern is that since the last time the voters have been asked, the circumstances have changed. And so I see no harm in asking the voters if they would like to continue. By all means, if we get 51% of the town who chooses to continue it, I have no problem with it. I would just like to ask.
My question is, I don't know what the fear would be if it's such a support overwhelming. Then this will lower the budget by $6,000, give it a better chance of passing. We haven't had a good track record here. And if it's such a sure thing that the voters really support it, why not? We're going to put other things, I'm listening to the selectmen meetings, there's other things that we hear, let's put it as a warrant. Definitely, the voters will support it, get it out of the budget, put it as a warrant, they're going to pass it. That would be my take on it, and for once and for all, put the issue to bed.
If we use that logic, we might as well put warrant articles for every single item on here.
No, but certain ones I would be, I would be all for that. I mean, you won't put it on for, clerical support.
How many times are you gonna put the same item on a warrant article?
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't like the way the vote went, so a few more years from now, you're gonna put it on again if it doesn't work. I mean,
When did that happen?
I believe the chair just told you that it's already been through a warrant article.
And when? What was the date, the year?
She didn't give it a date.
Okay. My point is, that goes the other way, actually. If you notice in the past, if you look at when the Board of Selectmen wants something, if it doesn't get passed, okay, like the town administrator, like police, every year it goes on, road agent switching it over until it passes. This is the other way. We don't even do it once. So, no, I would not do that, quite honestly. If it goes on a warrant, and if the people
Well, but
say
the chair
yes,
said it's already been on a warrant.
All right, if we could just.
it could
I
be
think
years ago, we don't know the date,
Chris,
10,
I
20
think
years
Ray
ago.
has a comment.
That's sorry, Ray.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. I'm willing to defer to the
I
board of you at any time.
Thank you.
But to be honest with you, being on both sides of the street, having been a selectman, and I've never been a school board member, but Cindy can get there. The amount of time invested versus the amount of payment, it's
pennies.
there's no way to equate it. I worked it out one time, like 14 cents an hour or something. But
It's before taxes.
I also was sitting on a board when we decided to zero out the salaries for the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen decided that. It was on a warrant in the past, and at some point it was put into the budget. It's been there forever. I mean, I don't remember a year that it was not in the budget. And I applaud the selectmen for walking by that this year and leaving that money, to help the town when they need it. I mean, that's good citizens doing something good, so they shouldn't get chastised for that. And as far as putting it on a warrant again, I don't know, but I think the roles have changed, and there is some merit to the conversation, but the reality is that $6,000 isn't a big fish in this budget to try. We haven't got there yet.
Any other comments? Dan?
Yeah, I know the amount of time those guys put in, it's hard to do. I got no problem with it.
I think basically some of what it covers too, are in the past, and I don't know if it's broken down at all, but a lot of times there's a lot of travel involved. So I don't know if there's a travel fee, gas and mileage and transportation or any of that, so.
Right here, 810.
So that's probably for
Well,
some
Town
conferences.
administrator, maybe.
Yeah, so I think it covers just some of the little things, when you go home and you print out your agenda, and it's just one of those things that covers the little things that you sacrifice when you become an elected official.
I'll say one last thing on it. I agree with you, that's fine. People in this room will agree. We're not the ones that are making the decision. So we could all, that's beautiful, they deserve it, they work hard, which they do. I'm not denying that, and we're all in agreement. Goes to the voters. Mike, and this is the last thing, I'll make a motion to remove it next week like I did last year and it failed. And it might not even get a second, and if it does, it might not even pass. That's fine. But having said that, if the budget that's approved by this board is not approved by where it counts, the legislative body, would that be the first thing that Board of Selectmen take out again next year because they got hit with a default budget? I know we can't answer that now. Or could that possibly be part of the reason why the budget fails, if it does? We won't know that until if and when it happens. So you guys know where I stand on that, but that's all I will say on the issue right now.
All right, any other questions?
Did you answer about the fees for the,
Nope, that's my next question.
all right.
So on the town administrator's salary, is there a new contractor in place, or is this a role of an existing contract to support the increase? Just
There's
curious.
a new contract in place.
Is that true? It's almost 8%?
Yes.
How did we come up with the 8%?
I
It's
can't-
decided by the Board of Selectmen.
Were there any performance evaluations or anything that were used in order
That's
to?
confidential information, I can't
So,
discuss.
but there were, so, okay.
Yeah, that's approximate 10% increase over 2 years.
Yeah, it's hefty. And I know it's another uncomfortable conversation, so I understand, but let's keep the person out of it. So, it's a lot of money, and,
Well, let's look at reality, right? There's a lot of people out there that aren't getting raises, right? Or that are getting 1% or 2%, maybe, cost of living raises.
People in this town
I will
haven't got
just
a raise
say,
in
although
7 years.
I will just say that while Mr. Hope won't say anything, I will say that Mr. Hope has passed up raises, even though it wasn't part of his contract for several years.
I know he has.
Yep.
And he did it voluntarily, and that's very admirable. But also, again, we're representing the taxpayers, and I know many taxpayers have given up raises and even given up money they've had.
We're not discussing
Involuntary.
other taxpayers,
Yeah.
we're discussing the town administrator.
Well, but the taxpayers are paying for it. You see, this is where I'm not talking about other towns where we have no bearing. the people are paying for it, and the people that are paying for it are not getting those raises. So I understand, no, I understand.
Your old labor statistics would disagree with you.
Yeah, I know that, because there's certain industries that are making huge raises.
Even government. They keep separate track of government as well.
Do we have any statistics on average pay, salary for like-sized towns?
Yes, we do.
What does it
but
matter?
The budget committee just said they don't care because they don't live in those other towns.
One person, member of the budget committee, that said they don't care what other towns do.
Actually, that's two, because it comes from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Rubbish, hogwash, garbage. Cite some independent source other than one that's
Wait, wait.
self-serving. and I'd be happy to-
Hold on a minute. How is the data that municipal professionals report to their professional organization garbage?
Jason, it's a circular, self-serving organization, and everybody can see that.
I fill out that data annually. I
This
put in
isn't
the
a-
real
this-
data that reflects this town, and so do
Mr.
my
Rowe,
colleagues. Those
I
are
was
real
not making-
numbers.
I answered a comment that Mrs. Kutcher answered, was that data is really not relevant. It's just like when we look at other contracts and everybody goes, oh, that's what they made, so we're gonna do this. And next year, we're in that mix, and so everybody keeps pointing to everybody else, and we keep doing us.
That's exactly.
Madam
what-
Chair,
That's-
we can make the data available, you can evaluate it how you wish.
I would like the data, because quite frankly, you can do that about any industry.
Yep.
But you know what? That's what drives who you can hire and what qualifications you have. So whether it's, a circular or not, that's who our competition is.
I'd love to see some independent organization, do some studies on that. It's always interesting that we got this.
Again, I'm
We
not
keep
sure,
doing this.
I'm not sure it's any different than any other industry.
Yeah, look, I think,
I didn't say it wasn't.
at the end of the day, right, there's a new contract in place, our committee has no purview over that
No.
contract, it is what it is, right, so. Just. You can
You're right,
debate it, you can debate it however you
We have no purview
want.
over the contract, but we do have over the bottom line, and that's the issue, because I remember even, we spoke about this in the past, in my first year here, that.
I'm talking about this one, not the
But
one.
so much comes to us, well, you can't touch that, can't touch that,
Yeah.
can't touch that.
Yeah,
And so much comes to us, you can't touch. It's, nope, none of your business.
I do think it would be helpful to know what, and if any averages were used in particular, I do think that would be interesting to see what other towns of like size, like, number of selectmen or whatever, it would be helpful.
There was also a compression issue that went into the decision. As the poli-
Compression issue?
As the police chief was making more money than the town administrator.
That's that circular spiral. All right, so you're going to get the information.
Yep.
and then-
All right, any other, welcome, we're on.
Is it over?
No, we're on executive, the first one. Which, we went out of order.
Are there any handouts?
No, there is an agenda, if there are any left over on
have
the
the agenda.
table.
We don't have paper copies for the budget?
Nobody asked me for a paper copy.
Need I ask?
You need to ask, but I figured you wanted.
I would kindly take one on paper myself, too,
All right.
please.
I printed it.
Yeah, I printed mine out.
He's got two, look at that. He's actually got three.
I have three. I have three.
Thank you, sir.
Disrupt thing that I never get here.
Should we take a count for next week? Because
No, I'm good, I printed mine.
Another one?
Yeah,
Another
it's,
copy?
Do I have
That's
that?
our only copy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, he only had 2 copies, so we were passing it around.
there were links, and that information has been forwarded just as of tonight,
Okay.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments about the executive budget, the next one is town meeting, 4130.3.
Town meeting, this budget reflects a decrease. This obviously goes up and down depending on the number of elections we have. Next year is a one election year, so the costs for ballot clerks, moderator, programming the voting machine all go down. The election supplies that we try in those off years to upgrade where we need additional signage or barriers or that sort of thing, rather than doing it in the already expensive years, so that's why you see the 740 line. added back in. I think you had asked that question.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, it is really just some additional signs.
How did we do with the electronic town report last year?
We had limited number of paper copies, and the world didn't seem to end. Everybody who wanted a paper copy had one. If they asked for it, we made them available. I produced more in-house than I needed. Even, because we actually moved, this past year, we moved
Right.
very in-house to produce them on the copier, do the sort of binder comb. We did everything in-house. That's why you see I dropped that line even lower.
Right.
It's basically just supplies. It seemed to work.
Okay. That's what I was
Yeah,
wondering, how,
that's-
what feedback you've gotten and if it worked.
Yeah.
And just so people know, how can they find it online?
It should be accessible right from the homepage at litchfieldnh.gov.
Yep, it is on the front page, third line down, says both the school and town center.
And the next question, well, as new years are going on, will the previous years stay online, or will they be archived somewhere?
They've been staying online.
They're online, they're in the document.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments on town meeting? All right, we'll move on to 41.1, town clerk.
Town clerk, two things happening in this budget. One is a decision to move the majority of mileage and tolls out of this line. We had maintained this sort of artificial division in between the clerk and the collector, that we have department-specific things, user group meetings, training, conferences, and then the clerk collector's office is also the one that makes our daily bank deposits, which is really a function of accounting. It's not really a function of clerk or collector, and we kind of would split the number in half each month. And some months we'd forget, and then somebody on the budget committee would ask us one month what happened. So it struck us that they should all go to accounting. We moved that, we kept the basic conference piece there, so that's an accounting maneuver. You'll see those numbers pick up in accounting. That's not a real savings. I'm not going to try to pretend it is. Postage, this is simply an oversight that we've had the past couple of years. The mailing of renewal notices is pretty consistent. We're pretty comfortable with that number. We changed vendors on that last year. But when people mail things in, to mail their registrations in, we mail them back. Those stamped envelopes that go back, we buy those envelopes and send them back. It's kind of baked into the transaction cost. We've purchased them every year. We just have failed to itemize them. So,
You lowered overtime from 200 to 150. Why would the town clerk need overtime?
when somebody comes in at 258 with 5 cars to register or a marriage license, I mean, it's very rare that we have it. It's the sort of the unusual transactions. I mean, if you look at our expense, I think we've probably spent $100-150 there this year. It's not a lot. But those are the kinds of things that we have. We try not to send people away at the end of the day.
Couple of questions. Were you all set on?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, sorry. The 342, the software support one, isn't that technology related?
It is, but it is department specific. No other department uses it but them. So that's why, and so that's sort of the fine line I've used, is it's not shared. So non-shared things are staying in the department. You'll see their Interware there, you'll see Avatar assessing and assessing, you'll see IMC and police. That's the logic I've used.
And I'm sure we've had this conversation before, I don't recall. What is Interware?
Interware is the software that handles your vehicle registrations, the boat licenses.
So it's the online?
Yeah, it is,
Okay.
and it is what they use in the office to maintain those.
Got it.
It's, yeah.
And is the support service, why is there a fluctuation in cost? Is there,
The price goes up every year?
all right, so is it
Yeah.
a fixed price contract, or is it or is this, 4921 is a random number, right?
It is.
So, I would expect like 5,000.
Once upon a time, we signed a contract with them that must have been some fixed number. Each year, their price gets a percentage added onto it. So this is the number that they've given us for cost of service for next year.
Single source.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge with a lot of our department-specific software, is there's not a lot of competition. We're kind of,
Don't know, see.
we are where we are.
Yeah, is what it is.
Any other questions on town clerk?
So the health insurance, that's two people, that's half the cost of the two, right? That's, because it's split between two departments?
Yeah, we still split, yeah.
Oh,
And so
okay.
the
So I was trying to figure out if it was
wages,
2 or
health, dental-
4, so,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
all of those, the
So it's really
110s,
one
the
half.
200s, they're all split half and half.
Okay.
So-
And do we no longer have a justice of the peace?
No, the JP renewal is once every 5 years,
Okay.
so.
Any other questions? All righty then, moving on to accounting, 4150.1.
The changes here are the movement through the old salary schedule at this point for our office assistant and finance manager, both of whom are relatively new in their number of years of service for us. And yes, the question was, yes, we have 3 distinct people. One, the finance manager oversees the operation in the financial department. The office assistant is the person that you'll see at reception who double dips with building department secretary, various minutes fill in, my assistant's welfare intake, sort of catch-all. Bookkeeper position has been a long-standing position here. That is the person that handles the technical entry of payroll, accounts payable, and the various technical journal entries that come from being authorized in finance. The other pieces changing here, the mileage and tolls brought over. Again, we talked about this before. We basically just based this on 260 bank trips. Trip to bank, current mileage rate is $9.04. So that's what we pulled over into there. The remaining pieces are treasurer's reimbursement. There are certain times where the treasurer has to do banking for us, separate and different from what the daily routine that the town clerk tax collector does. Finance manager training. That's variable depending where it is. Our financial software company is based in Franconia, so one good workshop in Franconia will chew up a bit of that.
The finance manager and the treasurer is a part-time job?
Yes.
It can't be combined with the finance manager?
No, they're two very separate and distinct roles.
Under state law, they are separate roles.
There is a controls-related issue to that.
There is no such thing under state law as finance manager, there is only treasurer.
I was told in the past, I think we spoke about, there is really a law that says you need to go to the bank every day.
There is a state law that says that any time you collect over $500, you have to take it to the bank.
Which means we collect over $500.
Which mean, yeah, I mean, we collect that easily each day, so that's the challenge we have. And I'll tell you, that also impacts for our banking, who our choice of banks are, because we have a limited cycle knowing you have to go each day.
Now, my question is, there's something newfangled out there, which I don't understand, but you take a picture of your check and send it in. Can we not do that?
Yes, but we still will have enough cash that will meet the cash threshold we have to go. Because we've entertained that idea, but the problem is, we still get cash. And that's ultimately the problem. So, and most of the scanning equipment, I mean, we're a little more high-tech than on the consumer end. They actually would, there are deals where you can actually get the unit here, you don't have to shoot it with your phone.
Gotcha.
I am trying to convince the bank to allow us to photocopy bills and just deposit them.
I guess my question is, the law says the cash has to go to the bank, not in a safe, secure.
It says to the
It says
bank.
to the bank.
Yeah, it says to the bank.
Because it's a lot of money
It
just to
says
drive
will
back.
be deposited.
Yeah.
On mileage and tolls, right, and I apologize if you went through that pretty quickly, because I was trying to process everything that you were saying. Why is there town clerk and tax collector mileage and tolls also in those respective lines if you're aggregating it here?
Because what is retained in the clerk and collector lines are the things that are specific to that function. So what I retain, the much smaller numbers in each of those budgets are the clerk's convention, clerk training, collector's training, so the role-specific things. And what I yanked out was the finance bank deposit-related things.
Wouldn't it be fair to say that mileage and tolls generally would be the same cost this year as it would be next year as it is this year?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Depends on the social security, not social
No.
security, the IRS.
Well, yeah, and it also depends where things are slated to go.
The mileage figure varies based upon the government's reporting number.
Right, but by law,
Yeah,
you
but that
don't have to
hasn't
follow
changed.
it. You could pick a number.
And that really hasn't changed. That's pretty
No, that's
static,
been
so.
staying.
We made a decision as a policy to pick the government number.
Right,
And
because if
that's
it went
fine.
up 2 cents, you don't have to say, now we have to raise it 2 cents. We can keep it at the same rate.
I'm not even debating that.
No, I know, but I just wanted, for clarification purposes, we don't have to. It's the selectmen's choice to do it.
Is that considered round trip? Always from town hall back to town hall?
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
right.
actual mileage, we just,
We run it on because almost every time it's from town, because it's usually a morning run, so it's from town hall to the bank and back to town hall.
so if I left town hall at the end of the day, I was headed home, and I went by TD Bank, and I just kept going home. and I'm still charging both ways? So it's not actual mileage?
We allocate it by day. Because the majority, if not all, of the bank runs are done in the morning, not at the end of the day. If there's an end-of-the-day run, it's a special run, it's sometimes a second run, so it may not even be added and
Can I keep
charged.
the money overnight
Yes.
But you just
and
said.
take it the next day? Even though the law says that it should be deposited each day?
We follow the law appropriately the way we make deposits.
Okay.
You see, because I got to ask the question, because if that's the case, now you can cut your deposits down. You can keep one for one day. They're still depositing it the next morning, just don't do it in the morning. Get the rest of the deposits go in the afternoon, and now deposit every other day. So, which basically they're doing already, and you are following the law, so maybe the law isn't as clear, maybe there is some wiggle room in there, because, so we could cut the figure down, it could be done if they wanted.
It is up to the treasurer to decide deposits and follow the law. It is not the role of the selectmen to determine deposits, and it is actually the responsibility of the treasurer. The fact the town clerk, tax collector does it is delegated formally each year by the treasurer. It is her responsibility.
Any other questions on accounting? All right, moving on, we already did information technology, so we will move to tax collection, which is 4150.4.
And this is just the mileage that we've been beating to death moved out. So I moved 1,087 out there. The rest is routine operation.
Any questions on this account? All right, moving on to legal, 4153.1.
This is, continues to be based on 10 hours a month at $170 an hour. I have no crystal ball. We, to this point, have had a successful year without requiring a lot of legal services. You think this gets to your question? I don't know what the magic number
I know
is.
it's a guess.
But the rule of thumb, if you know that I'm looking at 10 hours a month, you can burn through 10 hours real quickly on a major issue.
Yep.
So that's why I hesitate to move it back much further. You know, we were at $60,000 a couple of years
I
ago.
was gonna say, I mean, this is already reduced, and I think I mentioned that in my comment.
Yeah.
This is already reduced over,
Yeah.
looking at a couple of years ago.
We don't have any contracts or any reason coming up that it would, that we know of?
No, it takes.
You don't know.
It takes one lawsuit. I mean, the only thing that we have, and it doesn't, that's out there hanging at the moment is and,
It's irrelevant.
you know, the numbers will pick up, is a
There's
fair
always a
point,
potential
John.
lawsuit that could be out there, put it that way. So, right now, there are no lawsuits that we have, that at least I'm aware of or remember.
Yeah.
But
Right. Any comments or questions on this account? All righty then, moving on, advertising, regional associations, 4197.1.
This is basically flat. The increases that are small are just reflecting increased costs in printing ads and printing sample ballots. If we have a shorter ballot, the sample ballot will cost less to produce.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, Chris, I couldn't resist.
You know, me, the ballots, you know, I'm all for put a bunch of warrants on there,
I
but
don't know, we could save some money, Chris.
Page to page.
not at the sacrifice of voter input and choice. I have a question. The NHMA membership, you know, just again, I want to bring it up. Last year, this did not come to this committee. It was taken out of the budget by the Board of Selectmen. So it wasn't even reviewed last year. It wasn't until after the new year, but before Election Day, Mr. Lemire wanted it back in, and it was voted in to the budget. So is this a good value? We have an attorney. They seem the go-to place, a town attorney. Is this a good value for $6,700?
You can't call them anyone.
And well, but besides the fact, you know, nobody can talk to them. It seems almost like they're personal now for the Board of Selectmen. And I got to tell you my honest opinion, and I'm not shy to say it. They're there to protect the Board of Selectmen. We saw with the questions we asked and how they carefully answered them and didn't answer the question that I asked. And clearly, when they were here a couple weeks ago, they were very careful on certain questions. So there's a bias there. They are there to support the people that are paying them. So I don't see the value in this for the taxpayers. I see this as a value to the Board of Selectmen. So I would like the input of this committee here, because it seems duplicate, because we have $20,000 for a lawyer too, so this just seems duplicate to me.
Well, I would say that by protecting the selectmen, they're protecting the taxpayer, because if there's an issue that the selectmen don't do correctly, then a lawsuit is going to cost the taxpayer.
You could look at it that way, absolutely. That's another way to look at it, yeah. But I think you know where I'm coming from and why I'm making my statement. So I'm asking, is this a good value, or is it a duplication from what we have with the $20,000 from the legal fee? When I watch the Board of Selectmen, they always say we need attorney's opinion, so they go to the attorney a lot, not to the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
You're only looking at it from one perspective. The perspective you're looking at is from legal services. That's totally part of NHMA, but it's not the full part of NHMA. NHMA provides much more than just legal advice. That's only part of what they do.
Could you elaborate?
NHMA provides such things as training. They provide such things as courses for example, our police departments and stuff like that.
If you want a handoff, I can go through how much
Go
I
ahead.
have. We use their legislative services department. They're focused on lobbying on bills of municipal interest. We purchase their skills to monitor, engage in a wide range of topics. Local representatives are helpful, but topics, there are times that are not within their expertise, interest, practicality, or availability. They are able to lobby on our behalf collectively to restore rooms and meals tax that we're going to start seeing in fiscal year 2015. I rely heavily on their legislative bulletins to track bills of municipal interest. They provide training and technical support through their regular magazine, Town and City Magazine, which the non-member price is $50 a subscription. The old articles are archived. Usually this is the first place I look for background on an item. Much easier to find that background in relevant RSAs than search for the RSA and/or wait for counsel. Remember, we talked about how we dropped the legal services line over the past couple of years? Knowing that we have this access of resources, there are questions that previously may have gone to counsel at $180 an hour that I pull from the Municipal Association as part of our membership. We receive a variety of training materials that they provide to us. I mean, I can break out the different books that they provide. Get a couple $100 there. The municipal conference is members only for training, educational sessions. The service that you received that was a much lower cost than if we had provided through council. I mean, that's sort of the main thing, is that most of these things that are offered exclusively to members, we use those services and training. It's way beyond legal services. That's the least of the uses that we have.
Well, no, thank you for elaborating, because while I'm not as worried about the lobbying, considering how many state reps and local legislators we have in town and who are involved, but to know that there's a lot of training and other resources that you utilize, that's good to know. Thank you.
Lobbying is actually very important, because a lot of times you'll get collective towns that have an issue that affects
Sure.
several towns, that our own legislators, as much as they're right on top of things, they can't be on top of everything.
Sure, but that's not my primary concern. So my concern would be the training. The training is a good selling point for me, so thank you.
And actually, I'm going to do the counterpoint on that. The lobbying is a big concern for me, because I already elect my state representatives to go and lobby on my behalf in my legislative body. And I don't want somebody that I don't pay directly, I don't elect directly, controlling what happens to government. So the lobbying is a big thing, and we shouldn't, as taxpayers, be forced to pay for lobbying.
Right, but the fact that we get a lot of training out of it, to me, that's a better selling
You
point.
can get the training, if you're not a member, you could buy their services. There's other places you go for training, I agree. So, I mean, you can get training, you pay a little more as needed. So, and I see an issue too with the lobbying. We should not be recommending to the taxpayers to pay for lobbying.
Send a very competent person to take care of the town's business on my behalf. Mr. Byron does a great job.
And, and the legislative priorities that the Municipal Association does do not come up out of the blue. They come from its membership, who set what the priorities are. In fact, Selectman Byron and I were part of one of those policy committees this year. So your local representatives are informing that. This is not, what they're lobbying is not just pulling stuff out of the air. They are reflecting upwards, because we're not there every day. So I want you to know that we are contributing to that. It's not a faceless, lobbyist up there.
And there were several times as a state representative that I was involved in something that was going to influence Litchfield significantly, that I ended up bringing NHMA involved into it, and was able to do that to make sure that other towns weren't going to get hit, and it's their support. So it cuts both ways.
Is every town in the state a member?
There are two towns that are, two groups that are not members. I believe Manchester's one and Portsmouth is the other.
Yeah, I think one of them just came back in. I think Manchester might have just come back in.
If you want to call them towns.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of curious, because, I mean, if there was half the towns in the state belonged and half the towns didn't, then a lobbying effort one way or the other might be valuable. I'm just saying, from my own personal thought process is, we spend money there, we're spending money on legal. There's $6,000 in the budget that we could get that would recoup our salary increases that we have no control over, so, as a town.
And this wasn't in last year's budget either.
Any questions? All right, moving on then, street lighting, 4316 Black Street.
Near as we can tell, this is, should be in the right ballpark. We're trending towards that this year. I mean, if it is as dark as it was this morning for a few more days, those numbers creep up a little bit. So, we should be, give or take $1,000, we're there. If anything, we may go over that a little bit.
My question was more so because I think you're under, but.
Yeah, but that's, again, that's a timing issue, more than it is anything else.
Okay.
And I gotta tell you, that one, from a projecting point of view, is incredibly difficult, because unlike most things we've ever, we get like 8 or 10 street light bills a month, and they all come at different times. So, it is a little tricky.
All right, moving on, we've already done solid waste, so we're moving to welfare, 4445.2.
This is a unchanged bottom line of 20,000. And I will freely admit that our distribution by line item type is rather arbitrary here, because it varies year to year. You never quite know what the need is, so, my operating view of this is 20, and we deal with what comes in that way. I mean, I keep the lines because it's helpful to know, hey, I'm getting more demand for heating oil or electricity. I mean, the good news is we're trending below. We're trending well below that this year. But, I mean, I can say that today and have somebody come through my office store tomorrow that will consume our remaining balance and then some.
Yeah, look, from my perspective, this is one of the areas where I have a couple questions, right? I see the value, again, as I mentioned in previous years, of having this in our budget, right? And I'm not proposing removal of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also looking at actuals and what the town has required in terms of needs for this, right? And we've never spent, as far as I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, we've never spent 20,000.
So let me address some of your questions, and that is with state law. State law says you will pay welfare, and they don't care how much it is. So if we spend $50,000 a year or have $50,000 in charges, we have to pay it.
Okay.
So you can pick any number you want. The bottom line is, we got to pay it.
Understood, but we've never had to spend anywhere near that, right? Or anywhere near what's budgeted.
We have in the past.
How about the last
I
5
haven't
years?
seen it.
Yeah, I know we've come close. I think I remember numbers up at 24.
Oh, I can remember numbers of 30,000.
Yeah.
But the
I
last
don't see it.
5 years, I mean, do you have them?
I'll go back and look. I'll do that.
We
Next week I'll
also,
go back
we
and
also
look.
have
But, yeah,
organizations in town that help keep that number low.
Yeah.
I know the food pantry is a busy place at times.
Excuse me.
That's all done on the donations of the community, and you don't see those in this account. So I agree with Jason, it's kind of an arbitrary number.
And it's a real hard number to set.
Yeah.
And, I mean, as we're sitting here, I'm thinking, in the ideal world, we would set up a trust fund once. This is one of those classic problems I have of we raise a certain amount of money year after year. You guys used to hate when there was a contingency, right? And so we started moving to raise it once and then you have to keep raising it every year. I'm not sure how that successful that would be.
Is that an idea?
It could be. I'm not sure, whether the voters will embrace it or not, I'm not sure.
There's no argument, I don't think, of anybody in this room. You gotta pay it. If somebody's in need, you gotta pay it. Obviously, you go to charities first, locally, see if they can help out. If not, it has to get done. It has to get done. To Mr. Cutter's point, I don't know what the number is, but if the number's 12,000 a year, let's say, is closer to accurate, then maybe the trust fund would be an idea to bring forward to the voters, so you're not appropriating the funds every year to not be used. So you have the excess in there for those years, if it is 40,000 and you have to dig into it. But then
It'd
every
be an
year.
interesting court case if it failed on warrant.
I don't think it would, though.
So just some actuals, right, and these are very approximate. So for 13, we spent $7,000, 6,900 and change. For 2012, we spent 16,000. For 2011, we spent 15,000. For 2010, we spent 16,000.
So maybe
Yeah,
50.
most of those numbers that you're quoting are when Jason took over, okay? And prior to that, we had the selectmen running it, and we were running anywhere from that kind of number to $35,000 to $40,000, okay? He's running a tight ship. Now, to me, the way to approach it is, I think the way you're doing it, take a look at the bottom line, what we've been running, and pick a number.
Right, so my number.
20,000 or 15, or it's some number.
My number was 17, I
Yeah.
think, what?
And that's not
750.
unreasonable.
So,
If it costs us 60, then it costs us whatever, doesn't matter. We gotta pay it.
Yeah. True, of most things in the budget.
No,
You gotta lay people off?
I don't have a problem with that.
All
That's what it requires, that's what it requires.
right, any other questions on welfare? All right, next item is patriotic purposes, 4583.1.
unchanged.
Any questions on that?
You spent double that this year, right?
Yes, we did.
Well, wait, what did we do that was added to what was so patriotic this year? Came up. No, I mean.
The Historical Society handles all of that. We try not to go through all of those details with them. If I remember correctly, the thing that causes the swing in that budget is like replacing their flags. And if I look this year, and the other thing, to be fair, is where we charge some things. Some of the groundskeeping, the bark mulch and flowers that we put down there to clean it up. If I had decided to charge that to general government buildings instead, you would have never noticed the difference. We ended up charging it to patriotic purposes this year. So, the bark, you were still spending the same money, it just is, that's where we charged it, so.
All right. Next item is debt service, 4723.1, which is zeros. Well,
Yeah, we have the placeholder dollar for tax anticipation notes,
yeah.
which, if the state doesn't start speeding up how it sets tax rates, we might actually have to use those at some
Yeah,
point.
it's all this out.
All right, so these accounts that we reviewed tonight, we will be voting on next week. However, what we decided early back in April, May timeframe is we would go through and make our reductions, additions, or whatever changes. We would hold the bottom line though, and the bottom line, all the different account bottom lines, unless there may be some that are pretty straightforward, we might want to get those out of the way. But I know the concern last year was that late in December, some changes came through, we had to reopen and revote things, so we had agreed this past spring that we would make all our changes, but save bottom line for the end, for January.
And if I could just make one comment for consistency, I don't have a problem with what you said about save the bottom line, that's great, that's what was perfect. But then if some are easy, like the debt service, you might say voted. In my opinion, just keep it all the bottom line so it's consistent. I mean, we're not really saving any time, we're just saving the 30 seconds from
This
2 weeks.
meeting to the next meeting.
So I just say for
Yep.
consistency, instead of, well, because you know what happened, we're going to ask, is everybody okay with it? Going to spend more time asking if everybody's okay, to just make a rule, all bottom lines in one meeting at the end.
Well, if we vote on street lighting, which is one line,
We still voted the bottom line separately.
didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah. You vote on the line.
I can add some new lines if you'd like.
And welfare, if we treat welfare the way we just discussed,
Yep.
we're gonna vote bottom line.
Well,
Or not
I have
vote at all.
areas.
Because we're not gonna vote electricity or them.
Well, and the point was so that we go through, we have the debates on whether we should take things out, add things in, and make those changes if they pass, but then save that bottom line vote for the very end. So if changes come through, we're not in the situation we
All I'm
want.
suggesting is there are some accounts that we're gonna vote bottom line just by virtue of doing it. And the ones that I think we're concerned about were where we had the medical changes, healthcare changes, those kind of changes.
I don't know, legally, is it the bottom line? If there's only one line and you're voting that line, are you voting the bottom line, or do you vote twice? It might be a technicality, I don't know, and I'm asking that question.
last year we treated it as two separate votes.
I remember it too as two separate votes.
Right or wrong or indifferent.
Because when you vote
That
the
was
bottom
our-
line, you're pretty much closing it, right?
Well,
As
for
opposed-
example, patriotic purposes, it's 610, Memorial Day supplies, it's 902. That's going to end up being the bottom line, but now you've just agreed to that line. You haven't actually finalized the bottom line.
Well,
of
in
the whole
December,
thing.
Right.
the board can feel more patriotic, right?
Yeah.
Technically.
So I just wanted to remind us, that's what we discussed back in the April, May timeframe. I forget exactly when it was.
Right.
And then next week, we'll also go through and review.
I guess it's a
together.
technicality, because if you don't vote the bottom line, if you want to discuss it again, you don't have to vote to reopen it, right? Okay, that's the difference.
I'm
All
sure
right.
the budget committee will figure it out.
It is pretty complex.
The next agenda item is the RSA 72:22 review of expenditures. I know Andrew had a few questions that he had answered. Were there any other questions that the committee had for either the town or the school district? And we just got the school district today, so I'm going to guess that,
Yeah, no questions there.
That was as far as I got with that.
yeah, so that may be in the future. And again, next week, we're only doing town reviews. Not that you don't have to be here, you do, because we want your input on the other things, but just so you know that I'm not expecting any, when we're reviewing the town budgets, I'm not expecting to add the school district as an agenda item for these times that we're reviewing the town. All right.
So, are we going to get weekly town reports now?
You know, somebody did ask that question, was it you? Okay, about where we're now looking at actuals, and Andrew was pointing out the September actuals, and here we are at the end of October. Are we going to be able to get more up-to-date numbers?
You're producing them anyways.
You asked us for monthly reports.
Yeah.
We provided you monthly reports. We are continuing to generate weekly.
Yeah,
If you want to now be added back to the list, we'll be glad to add you back to the list.
well, it's easier to do that than have me sit here and ask Jason
You
what's the latest
still want to
number.
get the monthly report?
I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I believe
So
it.
so you want monthly and weekly reports now?
I didn't ask for weekly, I asked for monthly.
But my point is,
Bill's asking, I was going to say, Bill's asking for weekly, and you're asking for monthly.
no, my
come in
point
every couple
is,
weeks.
and I think you just heard me say it, is that when we go to review a line item, I'm going to ask, what's the latest?
Yeah.
And he's going to go into his computer.
I already have tonight,
Yeah.
and the numbers, well, for the few that we looked at, were the same numbers that we had on 9:30. Whether that means anything or not. but-
That may be the case, but it isn't always the case.
Right.
Conversely, if you were to send out, which you have, the weekly report, then I don't have to ask the question of you.
My question
and
is
spend
pretty
time.
straightforward. Is the budget committee looking to get weekly and monthly reports?
Weekly is fine,
During the session, while we're reviewing
if
the
that's what the
budget.
committee so chooses. I will do my analysis for this committee, not on a weekly basis.
Could it hurt if we get the weekly? If somebody doesn't want to open it, just don't open it. If the
Basically-
people that want to open it, they'll open it, right?
Basically, it's weekly for the next 4 weeks.
I mean, if it's going to them
That's all I'm
weekly,
saying,
you could add to the list. It's not, right? It's no extra time.
until we wrap the budget up.
So for the next 4 weeks,
Until we
or
wrap the
actually,
budget up.
we got 3 weeks now. 'cause
When we wrap the budget up.
We knocked
Wrap the
today.
budget up.
Well,
We'll put you, we can add you to the list, and when you get tired of seeing them, let us
don't
know,
open
and we'll
Simple
take you off the list.
If anybody doesn't want to receive them, just send an email to Jason, say, stop me on the circulation list, and we'll take you off. Not a problem.
Just push delete.
I was going to say.
Thank
I
you
think
for your
it's-
flexibility.
Yeah, I think it's easier just to send it to everybody,
Right.
because then it's one button instead of trying to keep track of who's on first.
It's
and
one
who's on
button
second.
either way.
Right. Let everybody else push delete if they don't want
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I was gonna say, it's
All right.
So that's the town,
You gotta put
What was
yourself in
that?
first.
so that's the town review.
Just put yourself in.
That's the town review for tonight.
Could I just ask a school question?
Sure, go ahead.
Have we received the final budget report for last year? The last one I've seen was in June.
I thought we did.
The last one I had was June 24th, and that was a tentative final. Okay.
I thought that we did, and
We got one,
What did we get last month?
that was done prematurely. The report came out,
Yeah, I don't know if you ever received the final.
oh, we got a,
and that's, is there a final?
He did in September.
Is that the final? I thought he was,
I believe that was the final.
yeah, because I know, for
I can
whatever,
look through my files.
for whatever
for some
reason.
I thought he said it was
We
still
never-
just
we
waiting
never
for
got
the
one.
auditors.
Yeah, right here. Is this it, right? End of year financial report. Yeah.
What's
What's the date of it?
Frank had forwarded it to the school board, it looks like on Thursday, September 18th, and we received it also on September 18th.
What's the report?
It is,
Is there a title to it?
yeah, FY 2014 Litchfield School District DOE.
Yeah, DOE 25, end of year financial report 2014.
Yeah,
What's the date on the email?
September
September
18th.
I couldn't find it.
Would you like me to forward it to you?
Yes, please, would
I'm
you?
in it.
Where you might have been confused is, for whatever reason, Frank sends me stuff on my home email. I forward my home email to myself and then forward it to the rest of you. So it may have had my home email, maybe it got...
No, I would have seen it there, Cindy.
All right.
I go into my school folder, and in fact, I went through every one of these before I came here tonight. I couldn't
Okay.
find it. But if it's out and you can forward it to me, that's fine.
On the way,
Are you going to do that?
right now.
Okay. Yeah, because I can see where I forwarded it. All right, so, member input, new business, anything, member input tonight?
Yeah.
This is a good expression.
You know, I'm just trying to figure out how to word. This is my 4th year here, and learn, you know, every year I go by, you learn a hell of a lot. You dig deeper and deeper and scrutinize things a little bit more. And I believe I know where my limitations and responsibilities are, and I try real hard to stay within my limitations and responsibilities as a member of this board. Some of my personal beliefs with you know, the way I would prefer to budget, which isn't the way we do it in town, or at least the way it's presented, you know, zero-based. I'm starting to look at these budgets, and when I look at them, I see all zeros, and then I try and justify in my own mind. And obviously, I don't have all the information, so I try and gather some, and I talk to some, but I clearly don't have all the information that the department heads, the administrator, or the selectmen have, as much as I try. So that's what prompts some questions. And my questions, I know sometimes are very uncomfortable, and I know individual persons sometimes come into my questioning, but I want to assure everybody it's not about personality, and I'm trying to do the best job that I can for the taxpayers, because I know that's who we represent. I mean, I know the employees of the town and all of that, but it's the taxpayers we're here for, representing. So I try and speak with a lot. Clearly, it's a tiny minority of the people in town. I know we all speak to people in town, try and get some input and listen to some opinions. And I ask a lot of questions, too. I don't just listen. I ask questions, because I learn a lot of people, like a few years ago, you just don't understand in depth. Everything on the surface just seems fine. But, yeah, I am questioning a little deeper on certain things, and I'm really questioning the need of some things, and I try and justify it 5 different ways. You know, it might look totally justified 1 or 2 ways, but maybe the 3rd and 4th, it's not so much. And, you know, I do the same thing in my own business, because it's getting, you know, my world, it's, you know, business is getting tighter, the customers I deal with, and I'm forced to justify things 5 different ways, and how badly do I need it, and the difference between a want and a need. So my questions will continue to sometimes be uncomfortable, and let me apologize in advance if that offends anyone. I don't mean it to be that way. But I'm also, I want to encourage everybody, and you might have already done it, I'm spending a lot of time reading, and I went to the library, old town reports. I mean, it's interesting going back to the town reports that were 4 pages, and, you know, but it's not a comparison. So I'm going back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you see things, and you look at things, and to Mr. Bork's point, you know, when I was talking about putting something on a warrant to see if people want it, he asked the question, how many times are you going to do it? Well, I'm asking once on certain things, a handful of things, but I noticed on some things in the past, if you look at the trends, and the 3 at the top is changing the road agent and new police officers and town administrator, they're asked over and over and over again, and they fail. So it happens. It happens the other way. So people tell me, it's like, yeah, we said yes to something 10 years ago. But we wouldn't say yes today, or we're changing our mind. But now that's not our purview. But that's what my thought process goes into, because we can't make policy, we can't hire or fire. Selectmen do that. But the point I'm saying is, if somebody said yes to a position or something 7 years ago, and it might have only passed by 5 or 7 votes, well, the way it comes to us now, that's the new backstop. Voters said yes. I mean, it took them 5 years. They said yes, we got it by a slim margin. Therefore, that's our new position, and we're never going back, never asking again. Well, the voters sometimes, and I think by saying no to the proposed budget for the past 2 years, they're trying to tell us something. Do we really know what they're trying to tell us? I mean, clearly they're telling us spend less money, but are they telling us cut a position? Are they telling us stop a service? We don't know that. Nobody's asking the question. This committee can't ask the question. But we better start presenting budgets to to the people of this town that they can say yes to, because we're getting our ass kicked. It's our budget, it's not theirs. They hand it off to us, it's ours. In 2007, now if I'm reading it correctly, and I know Mr. Byron would be more than happy to correct me if I'm wrong, we had 8,300 people in this town in 2007, 8,343, and we had a $4 million budget. Now we have 8,330 people, with a $5 million budget. Yes, the people said yes. The people said, we want this done, years ago. Maybe they're saying now, we don't want it. Maybe they're saying we don't want a $5.1 million budget. Maybe they're saying we want a $4.8 million budget. Nobody's asking them individually. We're saying, yes, we need this is a good value, we believe it. We're presenting it to the voters, they're saying yes. They're saying no. Just think about that. We got one more shot this year to try and give the voters a budget that they're going to accept.
25% of that number, though, is hydrants, right?
Well,
That the voters wanted.
All well and fine. Things change. They say yes. They said yes to the hydrants. Maybe if they were offered the chance to say no to something that they said yes 2 years ago, offer them an option again. Reevaluate. If it was 10, if they said yes to something 2 years ago, you don't go back and ask them now, do you still want it? If they said yes to something 10 years ago, you might have to ask them again if we determine it's not absolutely needed. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Couple of things, Cindy. Brian, are we going to get the enrollment projection sent to us?
They went out tonight.
They did? Okay,
Yeah.
super. Second question, I'm sorry, wasn't here when it started, but I had other commitments. Did we get a revenue forecast? That was supposed to be reviewed tonight, too.
That's a good point. I expected that because it was not part of the, there was nothing posted.
We'll have it posted. The board decided they wanted to take another look at that, so when we approved everything en masse, we approved the budget, we didn't go back to revenue, so they're gonna review them again this week.
And it will
At
be,
their meeting, and then after they do it, I'll post them.
it'll be posted
Yeah.
back.
The short answer is they're perfectly flat.
It's done.
Yeah, it's done, it's there. You'll get it, but there's no magical surprise there.
So we have it next week before we vote? Correct? We'll have it by next week?
Yeah, unless the wheels come off the wagon with the selectmen on Monday, but.
Which is entirely possible.
It's entirely possible or most likely.
Any further input?
The questions that I submitted in advance, could those be added to the minutes?
Yes, I think I forwarded them to you too, Michelle, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, and can you send me what you read earlier about the applications? Just so for the minutes?
Yes.
Just so I have,
Yep.
I can follow them and put it accurately in there.
Copy paste.
No, I don't do that anymore.
All right. Moving on to public input.
Thank you. Jason Gray, 11 Perry Court. Interesting is, I've sat on both, on that side of the table and out in the audience, and sitting in the audience is certainly interesting because I think I hear things much more differently than I did when I sat at the board table, and so I just want to throw some things out there from what I heard this evening. And again, I thought it was a very important point that Cindy made with your regard to ethics and that stipend that was brought up earlier. It's not about John Brunel, and it shouldn't ever be about John Brunel. What it is about, though, is a member of the Board of Selectmen. And so a member of the Board of Selectmen is going to be paid, proposed to be paid for something that they do for the town. And that's problematic. It doesn't matter that there is not, it doesn't matter that the person would likely be very ethical about it, and we might want it to be, and it might so indeed be. That's not the problem. The problem is, with elected officials, is combating the perception of impropriety. It's not the fact that it happened or didn't happen. That's an easy thing to ascertain, is if someone did something clearly unethical, that's pretty easy to say. The problem becomes is the perception of impropriety, the perception of something unethical, where you can't disprove it, because you're trying to disprove a negative, right? A person has an appearance, a thought, that you can't now go unfix. And so what they do is, and we need the highest regard for our people that we elect. We need to trust these people are going to do the right thing. And so when you create this perception in people's minds, whether you intended it to or not to, or even if it's not real, it does get created. And so why even broach it? When you go look at the New Hampshire Municipal Association's viewpoint on their website, they tell you to run far away from anything that creates any perception, because it's so valuable that you maintain the public confidence. Why would you then, I understand why, the rationale, but why take the chance? Is that $12,000 so important, not to John Brunel, but to a person who's volunteering, that we would cause more angst to the voting public when you're on the other side of the ledger going out and asking them for money? Hey, I need money to go do this and that because there's these priorities. But then we're going to lead them down the road to this perception that they could have that, oh my God, the guy's a selectman, he's paying himself. This is how it sounds out in the community when people talk. I heard tonight that no one had a problem with this before when he was doing it for free. I've had conversations with majority of people in this room, outside of this room, about the fact that it's free and volunteering and he is a selectman. So to say that conversation doesn't happen is false. It happens out there, not just with people in this room, but it happens out there. How come Brunel's in charge of that? Why? Well, because it's legacy. He did it before he was a selectman and it continued. Well, guess what? It's a necessary service that's required in our town. We should fund it. In my mind, some people have pigeonholed me into, you just want to cut everything. No, I don't. If IT costs us $60,000 a year in this town to effectively deal with our issue, that's the cost of it. Why do we shirk away from it if that is the cost? My concern is the perception that we're going to create. What does that cost us in effective governing, right? Why even play there? And I know I sat there and you were very upset when he brought up the word ethics again. You're like, oh, this is the fifth time again about ethics. I don't think anybody questioned your ethics. I saw it as this. We're arguing for the lowest possible perceptual ethic. Why argue for something that could be perceived as wrong? We should be arguing for the highest ethics, above reproach. And that position in this case would be, John, I'm sorry, Board of Selectmen, I'm sorry, pick one. And then we'll have to fund the other. So to me, we had a major perception of conflict of interest on our school board recently. I would tell you with my kid's life that member of the school board will fight to his death saying he did nothing wrong. So is it a perception or did it happen? Doesn't matter. The community was crushed with the scandal of a possible, whether it happened or not, whatever we want to call it. Why create another one when we don't have to? So, again, it's not about John, it's about the fact that he's a board of selectmen. Let's please just keep that in mind. It's not your purview to decide where that money's spent. It certainly is to decide what to fund. And if they, as a board of selectmen, want to take a budget that did not have $12,000 in it and take bottom line and go pay a board of selectmen to do that, I would say shame on them, and then as a voting public, we'll have to decide then how to handle the town administrator and the board of selectmen. It'll be out of your hands. I don't think it'd be pretty. I don't think it's a good public relations issue at all. It just tastes bad. But that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the Budget Committee was not asked to budget a payment to a selectman. The Budget Committee was asked to budget an IT support stipend. So, and I think however they choose to enact that, then you need to go to the selectmen with your whatever concerns you have about that. All right, is there any further public input? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
That was fun.